Peace, y'all. What's up? Jasiri X, One Hood Media. I'm here with, you know, one of the most, to me, representative when it comes to pundits. Somebody that really truly represents the needs, wants of our community, and is intellectual enough, so sharp that he's able to, you know, cut some of the heads off of these talking heads. You know what I'm saying? So I'm always surprised whenever I still see you, because to me you win the argument so much. But you just produced a new book called The Classroom in the Cell: Conversations on Black Life in America with Mumia Abu-Jamal. How did you meet Mumia, and how did that take place, and then what, I guess, inspired you all to co-author a book?
Yeah, man, you know, it's a good question. It's always good to see you too, brother, man. I admire the work you do and everything you are doing out in the world as an activist, as an artist, as a teacher, as a freedom fighter, man. I admire you very much, man.
Thank you.
And, you know, this book emerged out of the friendship and bond that Mumia and I have had. He called me one day out of the blue. You know, that's how the universe works sometimes.
Wow.
I always say I was having a rough day one day. I had been, you know, I was offered some critique. I think I was working with Fox News at the time, and I was getting hate mail from white folk. Then I had said something critical to black folk, and like I was getting hate mail from them, and the whole thing just kind of I was just in a bad space, man. You know, and I was like, yo, why do we even do this work? You know,
right.
And out of the blue, I got a phone call, unexpected, didn't recognize the number or anything, and it said, you have a call from Pennsylvania State Correctional Facility. The call is Mumia Abu-Jamal. And it just completely knocked. I was like, if it hadn't been a prison call, I would have thought it was a joke. But I knew how prison calls sound.
True.
I hit 5 as fast as I could, and he just reached out and said, you know, I've been admiring your work. I appreciate what you do, and I just wanted to holler at you. You know, and we both from Philly, both born in North Philly. So we both had that connection. You know, we both fathers, both activists, both grew up in these organizations. You know, our respective organizations and traditions, different, but still freedom fighting, you know?
True.
And we just bonded, man, and we talked about politics, and it all happened around Obama's presidency. So every week we would talk. You know, every Friday we would talk. Friday at 5:30. Yo, you see what just happened? Yo, I think he might win this thing. Yo, they might actually let him do it, you know? And we kept going back and forth like that. But then in the midst of talking about politics, we also ended up talking about our children and talking about what it meant to be men in America, and talking about masculinity, and talking about race, and talking about education. And, you know, we forged a bond and a friendship, and really a deep brotherly love for one another. And it was like, yo, what does it mean? What would it mean for the whole world to have access to those conversations? You know, we're talking about all this stuff, but there are very few spaces where you see two black men talking intelligently and passionately and transparently about their ideas, their beliefs, their aspirations, their anxieties, and their emotions. And there's no space for that. So we just said, well, why don't we just do a book? So we started writing this book together, and we started writing our first chapter. You know, I would write a piece, he would write a piece, we put it together. And one of the challenges was, even though we had the same politics, we still had differences, generational differences, political differences, ideological differences, just sometimes a slightly different vantage point. And I said, why are we trying to make this into one voice when the power of this interaction is two voices? So instead of making it an essay, why don't we make it a conversation and a dialogue? So we followed the tradition of James Baldwin, who wrote a book with Margaret Mead like this, and also Cornel West, who wrote a book of bell hooks like this. And we said, let's now have 20 years later another version of that.
Right.
And so we decided to call it The Classroom in the Cell, because that's where we are in our respective positions.
True. But
we also understand that those are the stakes for black men in America, period.
Wow, wow. That's two questions. One, you know, you're a professor, you're at Columbia.
Yeah.
I mean, did people come up to you and say, you know, you're writing this book? I mean, you know, there's still all of these people that view Mumia, you know, although I believe he's innocent, and I'm sure you do as well, and there's a lot of us that believe he's innocent. There's still a segment, especially in Philadelphia, that Philly's guilty, that Philly should be executed. Was any pressure applied, or people come up to you and say, you shouldn't be writing this book with Mumia?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, when I was writing the book, I didn't tell anybody about it. And that's
smart.
Yeah, you know, because I was more worried about the prison. I was more worried about the prison shutting it down, because this book was made from us having phone calls every Friday, 5:30,
right.
Visits to the prison, and written letters. And even in the process of doing this, the prisons would throw away our letters. You know, I'd write something with me, he'd send me a chapter back, it would mysteriously disappear. I started sending stuff certified mail, so at least if they threw it away, they're going to have to admit they threw it away.
True.
I mean, we did everything, so we were worried about that, so we kind of kept it under wraps to protect Mumia and also to protect the project.
Right.
You know, I wasn't worried about myself. You know, I got fired from Fox News 2.5 years ago from fighting for our people. you know. So and Mumia and Asada were key pieces of that, you know, because I believe in both of their innocence, and I'm willing to fight and represent them, and I'm not gonna run from that.
Absolutely.
So I wasn't worried about me. They already took everything they could take from me.
Right.
But I worried about the project. Now that the project's out, yes, I'm getting some of that blowback. I'm getting feedback. People saying, you know, all sorts of stuff. But I believe Mumia's innocence. I believe that Mumia didn't do anything wrong. I believe he didn't get a fair trial, but I also believe he didn't do it. Those two things, to me, make him a political prisoner.
Yes.
And I have to make sure that I do everything I can to bring him home. You know, his death sentence was recently overturned by the Supreme Court. That's a major victory because we get to spare his life.
Absolutely.
But the next step of that freedom struggle is to bring him home because he's innocent.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But in the process of doing that, you bring on a lot of enemies.
Absolutely.
You know? But you know what? If I didn't have enemies, I would be doing something wrong.
True. One more question, because I guess, you know, curiosity. How did you go? Because you're a doctor. Is it anthropology? Is that your discipline?
Education and anthropology.
So how do you go from there to being a pundit? You know what I'm saying? Because I know. I mean, I still see you on Fox News. I see you on, you know, MSNBC. I see you on these different CNN, these different places. How did that happen?
You know, I was doing my work like everybody else. You know, I was doing educational work. I was writing from my journals, writing books for my colleagues. And I appreciate that work. I think that work is valuable, and I still do it. I still write academic books. I still write academic articles all the time. But I also wanted to speak to a broader audience. You know, I come from a tradition of folk like Michael Eric Dyson, like Brother Cornel West.
Absolutely.
You know, who were committed to not just keeping their ideas quarantined in the academy, but believing that we have to share it with a bigger public because the stakes are too high. Black folk don't have the luxury of just studying these academic journals that 10 people gonna read.
We might not even get there on these college campuses.
That's exactly right. And so I had to think about a bigger and broader struggle. So I started writing not just to the journals, but to the journalists. I started saying, I'm gonna write to the newspapers. I'm gonna write things that my grandmama could read. You know, I'm gonna write things that my neighbor's gonna read. I'm gonna write things that the people I grew up with that couldn't make it to school, or that my brother who's currently incarcerated can read. That's the stuff I wanted to do.
Right.
And so I put all that out there and said, yo, we're gonna do this in a different way. And I had models to follow, like Dyson, like West, like Hooks, like Patricia Williams, you know, like Lonnie Green. I had these models, like James Baldwin, like like Grace Boggs. I said, I'm gonna do it their way, but put a 21st century hip hop spin on it. Hence the blogs, hence the Twitter, the YouTube, all the new media. I'm gonna put my spin on what they do. I'm gonna remix this particular approach to being a public intellectual. And so for me, that meant I'm gonna write to the public. I'm gonna speak to the public, but I'm not just gonna become a talking head or a celebrity intellectual masquerading as a public intellectual. For me, being a public intellectual is not just about being on TV, having a show or having a newspaper column. It's about linking my ideas to the public and its problems, and then rolling up my sleeves and doing the work. That's why you'll see me at a symposium like this. That's why you and I have been at conferences together.
Absolutely.
You know, with no cameras around. We just talking about problem solving.
True.
You know, we've been doing ACLU drug reform work for almost a decade now.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and in fact, that's I think where I met you. So, so that's the work. That's the struggle, and that's what we got to keep doing.
That's interesting because I didn't know until the day that it was intentional, an intentional process.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's important, you know, for our community, for other intellectuals. I do have one last question because you do have your own show. I guess what's different about your show, and what was the thought process around putting your show together and talk about it? What is it about? What goes on there?
My show, Our World with Black Enterprise, you know, for me, Our World with Black Enterprise was about, and I kind of inherited the show, but I said if I'm going to come
with the magazine Black Enterprise.
Exactly. Okay. And I said if I'm going to come onto this show and do this, I got to do it a certain way because I didn't become a public intellectual. I didn't choose this tradition just to be seen and just to be a star. It has to be about the work.
Right.
So I said we can do some interesting stuff. We can talk to black celebrities. I think that's important too.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to ask them different questions. But we're not just going to talk to black A-list celebrities. We're also going to talk to people who are stars in other venues and people who have something to say. So we'll have a conversation with Valerie Jarrett. You know, one of President Obama's chief advisors, because we want to get that.
Absolutely.
And I may also have a conversation with an A-list actor or actress, but I'm going to talk to them not just about their newest project, but I'm going to talk to them about representations of black folk in the media.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But then I'm going to talk about something deeper. Last year, we did a full half-hour special on Angela Davis. Wow. There has not been any TV show, probably in the last 20 years, that's done a full special on Angela Davis. And we weren't talking about her afro. We were talking about prison abolition. Workers' rights, the freedom struggle, critical resistance. That's exactly right. We were talking about the critical resistance movement and its offspring.
Absolutely.
And there's no other place on TV where I think you can find a 30-minute special on prison abolition.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to talk about.
Now, where can we watch that show?
You can watch Our World with Black Enterprise on TV1. It airs Sunday mornings on TV1 at 6 a.m. and it also airs in 150 broadcast markets around the country. So it'll be on your local ABC, Fox, NBC. Just check your local listings.
And how can we get the new book, The Classroom in the Cell?
You can check it out on Amazon.com. You can also go to Third World Press's website, which is twpbooks.com, and you can go in your local bookstore if there are any around, and grab The Classroom in the Cell: Conversations on Black Life in America.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna be reading it and putting something out there as far as my take on it, which I'm sure will be inspirational, man. Thank you for coming to Pittsburgh.
Thank you, brother. Love you, brother. Always, man.
Put it down, man.
Thank you, man.
Brother gave an inspirational keynote this morning, just about our responsibility in terms of critiquing media and then creating media for ourselves, man. So I'm glad he's here. It really set the tone for the whole conference. And so we're here at the University of Pittsburgh, the conference on the image of the black male in American media. And hopefully, man, we're getting a lot of minds open and more work done. So since we talk about black male in media, we got to create our own media. It's One Hood Media, Jasiri X. Peace.
Peace.